Okay, so to kick off this project, like I normally do, I need a way to generate a new app. And with Rails, it's quite easy, but I'm going to use my template here. It's at justdeliver/kickoff_tailwind. You can use what you want. This just saves me time and installs the VIs and whatnot out of the box. So we're going to go ahead and reference it. I have it downloaded locally. I cloned it. Just do a git clone and then pass in this URL. And from there I can run a new app. Here I am in my code directory, just a basic code. I'll do a Rails new, and then let's do Rails new. I'll say back my idea, and in fact I'll do it underscore because that's the convention we should do. And pass a database, in this case a PostgreSQL. I think it's Postgres. Then I'll just do PostgreSQL, and then I'm going to do a template of template kickoff tailwind is the folder, and we'll say template.rb to the actual template file. So -m passes the template, -d sets the database type to Postgres by default. We're using Postgres because I'll need later on an array type, and you can actually use Postgres to have that in the database layer. SQLite doesn't provide that out of the box, and I just said, hey, might as well use the real deal because Postgres is pretty much what you use in most apps out there that need to go to production. That can change depending on what you need. So we'll say Rails new, name of the app, -d, PostgreSQL, -m, kickoff tailwind. So we'll try this, see if it works. Here we go. So this will do a whole build process, install all of the dependencies, and configure devise, sidekick, and friendly ID gems, which we won't make heavily use of. Friendly ID, not much at all. Devise for sure. Sidekick, not really much, but we will actually use because we'll have some background jobs that happen. So I'll let this install, then we'll get started. Okay, so I created the app, and since I added initially in this repo, I named it the same thing, and it had some conflicts, so I renamed it just to back my ideas _demo. It shouldn't affect you. You didn't create this app twice. So what I'm going to do is cd into the app, back my idea, and then run Rails server. Nothing's really going to be here, but it says to do that since that's my jam. We did install Rails 6.2.1. I might back that out, to be honest, to be Rails 6.1. There are some weird quirks going on with the latest version I might run into, so I'm just curious how that might work. But so far so good. Here's the kickoff. I did kind of change the UI a bit and going to get to that, but first let's get our initial project concept down. So we'll have a resource called project, and if you're on Ruby 2.7 like I am, you're going to see a bunch of log errors and stuff. Depreciation warnings is all they are. It clutters up your interface. There's a way to turn those off. I didn't, just because didn't feel like it. So ignore that when you see it. It shouldn't affect much with anything you're doing, but it is annoying to look at, I know. So let's open up a new tab here. I'll do Rails generate. G is short for that, and then I'll just create a scaffold project. And we'll have a title that's a string, donation goal, that is a decimal, and then we're going to do a user references. And what that does is saves us a ton of time. It adds the belongs to user in the project model. It adds a user ID column in the database on the project model, and it adds an index to the same projects table in the database. That allows lookups to be more efficient and faster. So that's all using that method, and you'll see it in the migration that we create, that it does all those things for us. And it's just a convention. You don't have to worry about understanding that completely, but it does, as you use it over time, you'll understand what it adds to the app. So hopefully that makes sense. With the donation goal, we're going to change that a bit, I think, to be more of a default value. Yeah, we'll have a default amount to that. So I'll do Rails. I'll run the scaffold. It's going to generate some stuff we do want, stuff we don't want. I know you shouldn't do this in some cases, but I'm going to delete the scaffolds. Well, actually, it doesn't matter. I'm not actually rendering that. I'm going to use the JavaScript pipeline to render all of our styles. We do have Tailwind set up already, so if you haven't done that in your own app or aren't using my template, that's a whole nother thing to add, so you'd have to look up how to do that. I do have that on my channel too if you want to check it out. With this in, I want to actually open up the app in the code editor and change a little bit of stuff in that migration. So we'll go to DB migrate and this field here. We'll do a default of 0. Yep, okay. So I'll run that migration. Rails DB migrate. And like I said, a bunch of depreciation warnings, but the main line to worry about here is this one. And it looks like it worked. So we now have a project concept in our app. We can go and go to projects. Here's the basic form and whole resource stuff thanks to that scaffold. So that's good, that works, and that saved tons of time. So what I'll do is just show you by example that added the user ID belongs to user in the project, which is what we want. And then we'll actually want to put one association in the user model. We have devise again already configured. I want to add has many projects here, because a user can have many projects in the app, which makes sense. We can put dependent destroy too. And on the short end of what that means is if a user is deleted, the project that they created will be as well. So there we go. Okay, so if we check our schema, if you go to DB folder and schema, now we have some stuff in here. This is the projects table as we just created, our users table as well. Note the user ID that was added thanks to that references column, and then our default donation goal and whatnot. So we can have more columns later on as we add things. My template does add an admin attribute that's default to false for each new user. We can always change that to true in the Rails console. And then it adds the name and username, which extends devise. And if this is all over your head, definitely go back in the series and look at apps where I've configured devise from the fly. That's going to make more of a difference to you here than trying to do this from scratch and not understanding what's going on. So I'll go to the routes next and configure our route path. We're going to set the route path to just projects.index. And I don't like single quotes, so I'm going to change that. I need to update the template. This comes by default when you scaffold a model or resource. So resources projects. This authenticate method is part of devise. I have it there just for admin users. So you pass a lambda function that checks if the user is an admin. And if they are, we can actually visit the sidekick route, which is required here. We have those gems installed thanks to my template though. So no worries there because we won't really crazily use that, but I will show you it coming up when we do some background processing. So creating a new project, we'll need to update a bit of the UI. So let's go and do that. We'll just start with the form itself and kind of take it from there. So I'll go in there. We have our basic form path here, and this is the bit that we want. We're going to need this to be a multi-part too, because we want to add a feature image, or at least the option to add a feature image. Definitely don't need this if you don't want to add an image, but the multi-part makes it possible with a file field. It's kind of part of the process of adding it. Again, using Tailwind, so I'm going to do some of these classes off the cuff. But I'm also referencing some notes, so don't think I'm just writing it knowing what this looks like immediately. There we go. And then that's just going to be our errors if we have any. The field class, we're going to change, well, it's highlighting everything there. I'm going to change this to just MB6. And we'll eventually have a thumbnail field, but the most of these for now, all the label fields will have a class of label, and we can actually get rid of the user ID one, we don't need that. We'll do that in the controller layer of input on these. And then we'll have margin bottom 6. For the submit button, we'll have a button class. So we could just say class button and button default. I'm going to do like a theme override here in a second. That's going to just change this all to kind of dark mode. But for now, we should have just a basic looking form when we go to new project. So there we go. Notice the donation goals defaults to 0 and it's a decimal column type. So it's already got the decimal in there for us, which is nice. Okay, so I'll actually get rid of that backlink wherever it be. I think it's in the new path. And why don't we just do the new path while we're here? I'll set a bit of boundary here. Max width large and M auto. We'll just get rid of this link. We create a new, we'll just say create a project. Cool. And this has some basic classes, Tailwind. So we'll say aim bottom 6, text 3XL, and font bold. Didn't use any fancy fonts on this one, just the basics that come with Tailwind. My template kind of does the default theme. If you ever were curious on, if you go to JavaScript, style sheets, Tailwind config, I pull in the default. This is probably updated. I think Tailwind like 1.2 was just released, so I need to update that, but it shouldn't affect you too greatly. And I think that's it. So we'll start there and actually carry this over to the edit just while we're at it. So go to edit. I don't need either of these links. All right, cool. So those should just have like a general contained look now. Pretty sweet. All right, so notice our root path is now the project's index. You can create a new index or create a new project and just go to town there. So let's set up some initial CSS to kind of make this look and feel the way we want. I'll actually save some time and probably copy stuff over. This is the default that comes with my current app. So style sheets components, I added some to forms. Apologies, I'm not going through this, you know, completely. The CSS portion I don't think is a critical thing, but I like to make it look like what I created in the app. There is some stuff in here for Stripe and whatnot coming up, which we can customize. I grabbed it honestly from the Stripe docs and just kind of modified it a bit. So that's just one thing we could take into account. We'll talk about that coming up when we integrate Stripe. And then let's get the buttons CSS for now. So this is stuff, again, from the Stripe docs. You can get this from their branding page, I think. You can get the Stripe button CSS from there. I just copied and pasted. It's a ton of stuff, sadly, but it works for what we need. I then also applied the buttons as we needed to do. And then I will go and do, let's see, there's some base stuff here. Action tags, typography. I think I set everything to white. So I'll set that up. Paste that in, and we need to import it here. So with Tailwind, I think you normally would probably do @ imports instead of these directives, but so far it's been working for me. I've had some complaints that that isn't the case for some folks. I think it just depends. So action text, I'm going to have to install that. We'll add it in a bit, but I'm going to get the CSS for now. And I'll import it, but I'm going to comment it out because it's going to bark because of that import statement at the top of it. It's coming from a node module, which we don't have yet. So I'll just add it to the at imports. Since it's an A, I'll do it at first. Okay, cool. So with the CSS intact, behind the scenes, you can run Webpack Dev Server, which is what I recommend. So you could just say bin /Webpack Dev Server. That gives you hot reloading and is very crucial when you're doing styling, in my opinion, with Tailwind especially. It looks like we have an issue here. Resolve ID tricks. Yeah, so we don't have tricks CSS because I didn't comment it out like I said I was going to do. So let me go to application and that, and we should see it regenerate. Okay, cool. Cool. So our application layout is going to do the most of the UI updates. Notice everything's just barked right now. It looks like crap, which is fine, but we'll do that coming up. That's going to really apply and make the difference here. So we need to set the body class as a result. So I'm going to close all these so it's easier to see. We'll go to the application .html file. This is an app views layouts, and we have BG white right now. I'm going to change that to BG blue, and it's going to be blue 800, and then text blue 100. Okay, I think that's good. That gives us this bit. Let's double check our header and go from there. So we'll go down a little bit in that header and change a few classes as well. I think primarily getting rid of the BG. And the border. And honestly, the text color. Should get us what we're after, I believe. Yeah, there we go. So now we have kickoff here. We can change that to back, like build, what's it called? Back my idea. Might as well. Right on. And we can ignore the basic link thing there for now. But let's go and let's see. I updated our new and edit. And in our controller, we need a way to basically tell Devise to store the new user. So let's do that next, the controller logic. Let's first, I'll git commit. I'll try to do a little git action here. I'll do new tab. Change it to screencasting. So git status is basically a huge init. So git add. I'll just say initialize init. We'll just do init. Yeah, there we go. Cool. All right, that takes care of that. I'll try to create git history if that makes sense here. Since we're just building this from scratch though, and not really teaming up with anyone, it's not a huge deal. So I'll go to our controller. So projects controller should exist since we created that scaffold. And if you've used Devise before, we'll have a before action that can authorize any of these actions you prefer. So it's a callback that's going to set this authenticate user with a, and then we could just say except for index and show, because those are public paths. Right on. You can get rid of all these comments if you want. I'll just leave them just to save time. In our show and index, those are all good to go. And then within that, we'll have the edit stay the same, and for the creation, we'll do project.new, but then we want to assign the project to the current user. So we could say project, since it has that user ID column, we can pass in the current user thanks to Devise ID and just set it there. And then from there, it'll go and say, okay, respond to this. It's going to respond to HTML by default and say if it's saved, then we'll redirect to the project and say project was successfully created. Now later on, we're going to add a bit of logic here that sets up a project to have like a default expiration time. Won't worry about that right now because it's a little complicated, but we will be able to do that. So I believe that's good to start. And if we want to verify this worked, we can go and create a new project. And wow, that looks crap. So let me update our devise stuff now. So we'll go and update those forms to mimic what we need. And I believe since it's in my template, I have a form wrap yield statement. So we'll actually have a BG blue 800 and border, pretty thick border, 4 pixels or whatever it is. So border blue 700. We'll keep the rounded attributes and everything else there. I think it should suffice. So now we have this inverted look. So what I'll do is create a new project. You need to be signed up. So I'll actually create another. I'll create my first one. I'll just say just lever. Andy Leverance. This will be what I'll be an admin account later on. Sign up. Right on. Here's the basic project test, and then donation goal like 2,000. Create. Okay, cool. Created. Notice the user ID is 1. That's me, but we can remove that. That does tell me it did save though, but if you really want to check, you can do Rails console. Again, there's going to probably be some stupid errors in here just because of the Ruby 2.7 thing I mentioned earlier. But if we do a project.last, we'll see the user ID is 1. If we see user.last, I mean, I can't type user.last. That user ID is 1 too, so that belongs to a user 1. So those two match, which is the whole point. So that user created that project and it belongs to them. That's a quick way to verify if you're ever not sure. So there we go. We have a title, a donation goal, and a user. We don't have the concept of the description yet, but we can add that coming up. Let's do a little bit of cleanup on the project index so this doesn't look like garbage. So I'll go and do that next. This is the index. We definitely don't want a table layout here, so I'll reference my code, but just bear with me. Each project's going to be kind of a card looking feel. It's not the best probably use of what I'm doing, but I just wanted something that wasn't the basic default table looking. So we'll say relative with full basic padding of 6, margin bottom 6. Border will be a thicker border, border blue 700, rounded, large, and the large screens will do a width of 1/4. Large margin right, so otherwise it's going to be width full on mobile. So this is within the each block, and then we'll have an image tag coming up. That's going to be the feature image. Ignore how I'm typing this for now. I'm just going to comment it out, but we'll add that. I'm just reminding myself. But the main title is going to be an H2. Then we'll have a donation goal. Which will be, we'll do. This is actually going to be the description, which we'll do coming up. So I'll leave that there for now. Actually, I'll do this. Oop. Okay, or not. Then we'll have the donation goal, just a basic paragraph. I'll leave that alone actually. And then we can get rid of the user ID. View the project. So we'll say view project. This will have our button classes with a little variant. And then I use these helper methods. I call it if author of, which is a unique or convenient way of checking if the current user is the author of the resource you're checking. So in our case, we're going to pass project through. Now, I don't have this method created yet, but I will create it coming up. But essentially, I don't want the person who hasn't created this project to do any type of changes to it. So we'll just say edit. And I'm actually going to get rid of the delete from this view. And I need an icon coming up too. So I'll say absolute top 0, right 0, margin top 2, margin right 2. This will wrap this, and this will be a link block, so we'll set a do, and within it we'll just render an icon, which I'll go grab from the other project I have open, I think. So if we go to projects index, this guy, I stole it from I forget the name of the package. The icons Steve Shoger created. I use them religiously compared to other ones, but I set a basic width and height of text white, opacity 75, and fill current. So it'll actually be situated in the top right hand corner of the card, as opposed to the latter. And I indented that wrong. Go. That'll work for now. And I'll just actually get rid of this new project. We're going to put that in the application layout. So I've got the wrong window open. So if we refresh this, I believe we should have something. Okay, yeah, I can't spell either. So let's change project. We need this helper method. So I'll go into our actual application helper because I can use this in pretty much site-wide if I wanted. So let's add that to it. And then this is a controller, excuse me, helper. Here we go. And we could say author of, and we could pass in the resource. This will essentially be the model every time. Then we could just say user signed in. We get this from devise. Just checks if they're actually authenticated. If they are, then we'll say resource dot user ID, which typically would be a user in this case, and then current user ID. So if those match, then that's the author, which we demonstrated in the console before. I'm also going to add one for admin. It's just a basic Boolean check. So user signed in and current user dot admin. There we go. That question mark basically says, is it true on a Boolean property? Then coming up, we'll add some stuff for Stripe. I'll leave that out for now, just so it's not confusing later. But I think that should wrap up the index. If we get, let me open that back up. I had a typo. User signed in. And edit project path, stringify keys. What? Oh yeah, edit can't be in that link. So we'll just get rid of that. Boom. So eventually there'll be a description here, which I'll actually do next. And then you can view the project. So let's add that description real quick. So I'm going to use active text or action text. I can't speak. And you can do that. Normally you would add a field to the database. That's going to be a column that you would store that in. Action text is its own separate table. So you can actually just do that dynamically. So the way it works is Rails action text install. We need to actually install dependencies for it first. I believe I'm in the right path of the app. So it creates a few partials, some tests, and some style sheets that renders stuff. It also adds a yarn tricks dependency, which is what we need primarily. Adds that to the application.js file, which I'll show you here. And it also creates some migrations, which we need to add. You'll notice the active storage has this blob partial now. That's basically for storing blobs, which is part of active storage. Action text uses active storage. It's hard to say. And combined, they can do quite a bit. So it turns out it's pretty simple to set up once you get it running. All we need to do in our project model is have has rich text description. And let me show you what was added here. Packs, we've modified this. Notice it's added tricks as a dependency. I'm gonna actually make this the last thing because that's our own stuff. I'll probably just get rid of this. Oops. Great. And then now we can actually, if you remember, our style sheet was commented out in our application. I'll reintroduce that since this is coming from that node module, if you recall, right here. We're going to import the main stuff, but override it in this specific instance. So hopefully we have migrations pending because we added active storage. So I'll say Rails DB migrate. You can also press that button in that UI if you wanted. So there it created active storage tables. Pretty cool. And I have so many windows open. We have Webpack running and Rails running. Good. So I'll refresh this page. We should be all set. If we go to edit, we still need the field for the description now. So let's go back to our project. Projects. And let's see, form. We'll add one more field that will be the description, but it's going to be titled a slightly different. Rich text area. And you can add the same input if you want, but this will be description. And notice I didn't add a table to the projects database at all, which is the appeal of this. Like, it's all separated, but still correlates. So now we have automatically, obviously I have to paste some code in, but we have that description field now. We could just say this is my test description, update project. Now we have that on our show view. We also will have it in our index view once I uncomment a bit. I need to reopen that. So projects, index. So I want to, it's this div right here. And what I'm going to do is kind of fancy just because the rich text formatting. I don't want to render the whole piece of that content because it could be long. So we'll just say strip tags, which is a dynamic thing to strip any HTML that comes out. And then we could just say project description to string. So _s there. And then within this truncate, we can pass a length. So like 140 is like the old tweet character length, which is pretty nice. And we can refresh, and I don't see it. Oh, the reason it didn't save is we need to add a controller permitted parameter for it now. So projects controller, way down at the bottom we have user ID and stuff. We can, I mean, we could keep that, I guess. But I'll also add, in fact, I'm going to remove that. I'm going to add the description column here. And if we update that description one more time, sorry, I missed that part. Edit. We don't have it showing here yet, but we don't really need to. So description is cool. There's our donation amount. Very nice. And that's that. So we've added active storage and tricks and all of those things all at once. It made it quite easy to set up. And now we have stripped HTML to render the configuration there. So we'll get to the show view. It's more comprehensive coming up. What I want to focus on is adding thumbnails and stuff next. It should be pretty simple since we have active storage already installed. So let's do that, and then I'll round out this video. So let's do has one attached thumbnail. So we could just say we need to go to our project model, and we'll say has one attached. I think I called it thumbnail. Yep, okay. And then we can just say in our views, essentially add the field for the thumbnail again where we were before. So on the projects form, go down to the description area. It could come first, to be honest. Maybe we'll do it first. title, we'll just call it file field. I have another tutorial about drag and drop with active storage and stimulus and stuff that you could check out if you want to do something of that nature. This is very old school, just HTML, which works, but it's not as flashy. So thumbnail, and we could just call it, that allows you to override the label there. And we need a comma. Label, form file field. Let's get rid of the input class here. That'll mess it up a little bit. Again, remember the multi-part true on the form here. If you don't, this won't work. Definitely need that. And I think that should do it. So we could attach a thumbnail. Let me grab something from like Unsplash. Go to our browse, and we'll go to, I was just at downloads, Harley. There it is, update project. Now, I didn't do the controller thing, so we're gonna have to do that, I believe, as well. Yeah, so let's go and update the controller. Projects, controller, and we'll just pass in thumbnail there. Then that should work. Before we do that though, we can't even see it on the show view, so I'll just add something primitive for now. Actually, we'll do it on the index view just so we have that ready to roll. So it's going to be this image tag I commented out. Whatever, it's okay. I'll do a little bit of margin on the bottom. That's not ideal by any means, but it's all good. Ew. We'll just do height auto. Whatever. So those will look kind of more like a weird, I forget the name, masonry grade kind of thing, but it's okay. So yeah, that's essentially what I wanted to do in this. So we'll stop there and go back to our app and figure out next the commenting system. So each project's going to have a comment, and it's going to be a polymorphic association, so it'll be kind of dynamic. And then we'll finally get to the project's show view coming up. So there'll be quite a lot going on with getting that set up and looking good. But with that in mind, I will pause this video for now and continue on in the next. So I'll see you in that one. Hello Rails is my new course on Ruby on Rails. I'll teach you Ruby on Rails from the ground up. Visit hellorails.io for more information.